Hello everyone. Today I wanted to spend some time discussing Bruce Dickinson, specifically his solo career outside of Iron Maiden. We all know Bruce Dickinson is the famous lead singer of Iron Maiden, but he also had a fairly interesting solo career where he released 6 studio albums, and as all of us diehard Iron Maiden fans wait patiently or impatiently for the next Iron Maiden album, I think it's important to spend some time revisiting his music that he made as a solo artist. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. So we all know Bruce Dickinson started in a band called The Shots in the late 70s, then from there joined Samson, which was a new wave of British heavy metal band. He was the singer on the second and third Samson albums, Head Down and Shock Tactics, and then he, from Samson, joins Iron Maiden. His story as a solo artist kind of begins in the year 1990. He's feeling a little creatively stifled and a little bored with Iron Maiden, and so he gets together with a different group of musicians and records a song called Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. This song gets a lot of positive attention immediately and finds its way onto a soundtrack for one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that came out at the time. Then it quickly gets included on the next Iron Maiden release, which was 1990's No Prayer for the Dying. And I can tell you, if you listen to both his solo version of it and the Iron Maiden version, they sound almost identical. There's just the obvious sonic differences of having different personnel performing the songs. But this triggers his desire to do more solo work. He soon records his first full-length studio album, 1990's Tattooed Millionaire. This album is also notable because we also see Yannick Gers as the guitarist on here. Of course, Yannick becomes the guitar player in Iron Maiden after Adrian Smith leaves. But him and Bruce partner up here and release Tattooed Millionaire. This is an interesting album. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite of his solo releases. I like a lot of the material on the first half of the album, not so much on the second half. The second half, you start hearing a lot more of these cliches in the pop metal world that was what the late 80s and early 1990, that era was. It's got kind of a slick commercial sound to it, pop metal, pop hard rock. There are some good songs, Born in 58, Gypsy Road, title track. If you get an expanded edition, there's also some good unreleased tracks or tracks that were only included on the expanded deluxe edition, like Spirit of Joy, which was a song recorded originally by Arthur Brown. If you know Arthur Brown, he was one of Bruce Dickinson's heroes, one of his big influences as a theatrical operatic singer from the 60s. So after Tattooed Millionaire, he goes back to Iron Maiden. He regroups with them. They release Fear of the Dark. But he pretty much has decided he wants to try and make it as a solo artist. He announces he's going to leave the band, and even while he's still winding things down with them, he's writing his songs for his next release. And he works with a producer named Keith Olsen and is working with some different musicians, and they start recording some songs. I'm not sure if he's completely liking the direction of things or what exactly happens, but I think he goes to California for a while, and while there he meets musicians who are in a band called Tribe of Gypsies. They're a Latin-influenced hard rock band out of the San Francisco area, and their guitar player is this guy who goes by the name of Roy Z. Anyway, Bruce is very inspired by the Tribe of Gypsies and forms a a strong relationship with them, and they immediately start pumping out new songs that are different from this previous batch of songs. So as such, he records the bulk of what was the main release of Balls to Picasso, his second studio album from June 1994, with the Tribe of Gypsies. But if you get the expanded edition, which I really strongly encourage people to do, you get this second CD, which is basically the lost album of the recordings with Keith Olsen. And I really am impressed with the tracks on here, on both the primary Balls to Picasso release and the lost album's worth of recordings. But what a fascinating batch of material. And he sounds so adventurous and inspired on a lot of this. And you will hear songs on here that you won't think is Bruce Dickinson singing. There's incredible breadth and diversity amongst the songs. Of course, the main song probably from the primary release that was most popular was Tears of a Dragon, but that second album's worth of material, there are some great finds on here. Firechild is one of my favorite Bruce Dickinson songs of all time. Over and Out, The Breeding House, Cadillac Gas Mask, No Way Out. These are very interesting, fascinating pieces of music that I strongly encourage you to seek out. Anyway, after Balls of Picasso, he comes out. He's not able to really tour with the band of Gypsies behind it, so he hooks up with some other musicians again, including a guitar player named Alex Dixon. And around 1995, this new group quickly goes in and records an album called Alive in Studio A, which is simply re-recordings of Balls to Picasso and Tattooed Millionaire. And then they follow this up with his next studio album, 1996's Skunk Works. And this is an interesting album for a couple of reasons. One is that it has Jack Endino as the producer, and if you know Jack Endino, you know he was a real integral member of the Seattle music scene of the late 80s and early 90s, helping to kind of craft and promote that grunge style, for lack of a better word, that became so popular during that time. He was the producer on Nirvana's Bleach album. So this seems like kind of an odd pairing here, but it all kind of works together, and they come up with some interesting songs, none of which are over 5 minutes long. So they're pretty concise compositions on here. Sonically, the guitar playing is much more shimmery. It sounds like a lot of Stratocasters were used on this. So there's some different textures in that regard too. It does have that kind of derivative feel to it, of mirroring some of the late or early mid-90s alternative hard rock. And that's probably a criticism of it in a lot of people's minds. And it didn't really do well commercially for him, although I do think there's some good songs on here. Inertia, I think that was a single. Dream State, that one actually does have a Nirvana sound to it. Meltdown, Strange Death in Paradise, good song. So anyway, after that, he decides to rejoin forces with the Tribe of Gypsies, and in 1997 releases Accident of Birth, and also brings in Adrian Smith, who had also left Iron Maiden but was in his own band Psycho Motel at the time. And all of them together create this wonderful collection of music. The songs on here are really strong. It's kind of a return in almost a triumphant way to the more traditional heavy metal stylings that Bruce is known for with his singing and music. And I think Adrian Smith makes just a huge impact on here as well. Great material on here. Star Children, Dark Side of Aquarius, fabulous song. Road to Hell, very catchy, great song. Man of Sorrows, the title track. Omega. There's also, during these sessions, a song recorded called The Wicker Man. Probably have heard of that one before. Well, it is kind of, it kind of inspires the song that ends up being the famous song on the Iron Maiden album, Brave New World. But it's not the same exact song exactly. It is different. And I encourage you to seek it out and listen to it because it's very good in its own right. You can find the release of Bruce Dickinson's version of the Wicker Man on his 2001 Greatest Hits album on the second CD, which is a collection of B-sides and unreleased solo material. But a certain bass player in Iron Maiden heard this version of the Wicker Man and thought, yeah, I like it. We need to do that for Iron Maiden. And obviously it's reworked, but that's what draws it into Iron Maiden is Bruce Dickinson's version. In 1998, he releases his next studio album, which was his 5th studio release as a solo artist, The Chemical Wedding. And this is a very strong album, written with incredible depth and detail, inspired by a lot of the works of William Blake, the English poet and painter of the 18th and 19th century. Bruce taps into a lot of his writings as inspiration for this. Even the cover of The Chemical Wedding is a William Blake painting. Let's see if I have the title written down. Yes, Ghost of a Flea. Ghost of a Flea. Anyway, musically, it's almost like a step up from its predecessor, Accident of Birth, in that they create a very intense, heavy, thick wall of sound. I think Adrian Smith's and Roy Z's guitars are tuned down a little bit more on this album. And I should say it is the same lineup as Accident of Birth. So yes, Adrian Smith is on this one as well. But this sound, because it's so thick and heavy and kind of a little more down tuned, it gives it the material kind of like it's starting to veer a little too close to some of the new metal sound of the late 90s and or industrial metal. And because of that reason, I might not like it as much as predecessor, but there's still great songs on here. The title track, Book of Thale, The Tower, I think was a single off here. Love the song The Alchemist. It's got such great guitar textures and effects on it. Also, Jerusalem is a great song. It's got this kind of sweeping pastoral feel to it in places, and with acoustic strumming, and then it builds an intensity, and it just has an overall great sound to it. So, Chemical Wedding, 1998. Of course, after then, Bruce rejoins Iron Maiden. They released Brave New World in 2000, and then Dance of Death in 2003. In 2005, he releases what at this point is his last studio album as a solo artist, Tyranny of Souls. This is a pretty good album. It again has the band of Gypsies guys on it, Roy Z as the guitar player. It is missing Adrian Smith, and I think Adrian Smith's absence makes it a little more of a middle of the road album in his studio solo discography for me. Songs are pretty good. Really like Navigate the Seas of the Sun, Power of the Sun, River of No Return is a fabulous piece of music. But overall, maybe not quite as strong as Accident of Birth or Chemical Wedding, but a very heavy album. Those are his studio releases as a solo artist. He's got 6 of them. Really implore people to go out, dive into this this collection that he has here. These sets of songs are so great. You're bound to find things that are inspiring, refreshing, adrenaline inducing, and definitely I've enjoyed diving back into this discography over the last 4 to 6 weeks. I encourage you to do the same. Have a great day, everyone.